Have you ever woken up one morning feeling more tired than you should, looked at your face in the mirror and quietly wondered, is this really just age? Or is something going wrong inside my body? Because here's the frightening truth most people don't hear until it's too late. Your kidneys don't scream when they're failing. They don't send sharp pain. They don't give you a warning shot. They slowly, silently shut down day after day while you're still eating what you believe are normal, even healthy foods. I'm Dr. Mark Ellis, and I've sat across from too many patients who were shocked by the same words. Your creatinine is high. Your kidney function is dropping. They always say the same thing next. But doctor, I eat fine. I don't feel sick. And that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. By the time creatinine rises, by the time GFR falls, millions of filtering units inside your kidneys, your nephrons have already been pushed beyond recovery without you ever feeling a thing. Right now, more than 1 in 3 adults over 50 are losing kidney function silently, and most won't discover it until their options are painfully limited. Dialysis, lifelong medications, a life suddenly ruled by machines and schedules. And the most unsettling part, in many cases, it isn't genetics. It isn't bad luck. It's what's on the plate in front of you every single day. But here's the reason you need to keep listening. Because once you understand which everyday foods quietly drive creatinine higher, why they overload your kidneys, and how to stop the damage before it becomes permanent, you regain something incredibly powerful: control. In this video, I'll walk you through the hidden dietary traps that accelerate kidney decline, and more importantly, the simple science-backed shifts that can protect your kidneys while there's still time. And what you'll learn near the end may completely change the way you look at your next meal. The first mistake almost everyone makes doesn't look dangerous at all. In fact, it usually looks healthy. It's the green smoothie in the morning, the spinach salad at lunch, the handful of nuts people snack on while believing they're doing their kidneys a favor. I see this pattern constantly. Patients sit in front of me genuinely confused, saying, Dr. Ellis, I cut out junk food. I eat clean. I eat greens every day. And yet their creatinine keeps climbing. One patient in particular stays with me, a 58-year-old man who prided himself on discipline. Every morning, the same routine: spinach, almond milk, chia seeds, cacao powder, no sugar, no processed food. On paper, it looked perfect. But his lab results told a different story. His GFR dropped steadily over 2 years, and imaging later revealed small calcium oxalate deposits beginning to form inside his kidneys. He wasn't reckless. He was uninformed. Here's what was happening inside his body. Foods like spinach, cacao, almonds, certain seeds, and raw leafy greens are extremely high in oxalates. Oxalates aren't toxic on their own, but when consumed in excess, especially day after day, they bind with calcium in the bloodstream and form calcium oxalate crystals. These microscopic crystals can lodge themselves inside the nephrons, the tiny filtering units of your kidneys, quietly blocking filtration and triggering inflammation. You don't feel it. There's no pain. But creatinine begins to rise as the kidneys struggle to compensate. Research shows that roughly 15 to 20% of kidney stones are directly linked to high oxalate intake. And even without full stone formation, oxalate overload increases oxidative stress inside kidney tissue. Over time, this constant irritation forces the kidneys to work harder just to maintain balance, accelerating nephron loss and lowering GFR. This is why so many people are shocked when their labs worsen despite eating healthy. The solution isn't to fear vegetables. It's to stop overloading your kidneys unknowingly. Cooking high oxalate foods like spinach significantly reduces oxalate absorption. Rotating greens instead of eating the same ones daily matters more than people realize. Pairing oxalate foods with adequate dietary calcium helps prevent crystal formation. And moderation is everything. The kidneys can handle small amounts. What they cannot handle is repetition without relief. When patients make these changes, something interesting happens. Fatigue eases. Morning puffiness reduces. Creatinine stabilizes instead of creeping upward. Not because of medication, but because pressure inside the kidneys finally drops. This is how protection starts quietly before damage becomes permanent. But here's where most people make their next mistake. They think once oxalates are handled, the danger's over. It's not. Because food doesn't only stress the kidneys through minerals like oxalate. Sometimes the real threat comes from something far more common, far more hidden, and far more aggressive in raising filtration pressure. And just knowing this first mistake isn't enough because the next one is even more dangerous, and most people consume it every single day without realizing it. Once people learn about oxalates, they often breathe a small sigh of relief. They switch their greens, cook their vegetables, and feel like the danger has passed. But this is where the real trap begins. Because while oxalates quietly clog the filters, something else does far more damage by turning up the pressure inside your kidneys every single day, and that something is salt. I remember a woman in her early 60s who told me, Dr. Ellis, I never add salt to my food. She genuinely believed she was careful. But when we looked closer, her daily routine told a different story. Canned soup for lunch, crackers in the afternoon, a frozen dinner at night. None of it tasted extremely salty, and yet her sodium intake was nearly double what her kidneys could safely handle. Her blood pressure crept higher, her ankles swelled by evening, and her creatinine rose without an obvious cause. Here's what most people don't realize. Sodium doesn't just affect your heart, it directly increases the pressure inside the glomeruli, the tiny blood vessels where filtration happens. When you consume excess salt, your body retains water to dilute it. That extra fluid volume forces the kidneys to filter harder, faster, and under higher strain. The nephrons don't get a break. Over time, this constant pressure damages their delicate structure, causing filtration efficiency to drop and creatinine to rise. According to national data, nearly 75% of adults in the United States consume more than 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day, far above the recommended maximum of 2,300 milligrams. For people over 50 or anyone with reduced kidney function, that threshold is often too high already. Studies consistently show that high sodium intake accelerates kidney function, decline, increases inflammation in renal blood vessels, and raises the risk of chronic kidney disease progression by up to 40%. What makes salt especially dangerous is how invisible it has become. It's not the salt shaker that causes the damage. It's the processed meats, the packaged snacks, the sauces, the healthy low-fat foods loaded with sodium to improve taste. You don't feel the harm in the moment, but your kidneys do. They respond with swelling, fatigue, rising blood pressure, and silent loss of filtration capacity. The solution isn't bland food or extreme restriction, it's awareness and strategic reduction. Choosing fresh foods over packaged ones immediately lowers sodium load. Reading labels not just for calories but for sodium changes outcomes faster than most medications. Using herbs, lemon, garlic, and spices instead of salt protects the kidneys while keeping meals enjoyable. And when sodium intake drops, something remarkable happens. Blood pressure stabilizes, swelling decreases, and the kidneys no longer have to fight constant internal pressure just to survive. Many patients tell me they feel lighter within weeks. Not emotionally, physically. Their bodies stop holding excess fluid. Their energy improves. Their labs stop worsening. That's not coincidence. That's physiology finally working with them instead of against them. But here's the critical mistake people make next. They think sodium is the main enemy, and once it's controlled, their kidneys are safe. Unfortunately, there's another factor that often does even more damage when people proudly eat in large amounts, because they believe it makes them stronger. And just knowing about salt isn't enough, because the next mistake is even more dangerous, and it hides inside foods people trust the most. Once people finally cut back on salt, many feel proud. Their meals look cleaner, their blood pressure starts to improve, and then almost instinctively, they make what seems like the smart next move. They increase protein. More steak, more chicken, more sausages, because for decades we've been told protein equals strength, muscle, and healthy aging. But this is where kidney damage often accelerates the fastest. I remember a retired firefighter, 62 years old, who told me, Dr. Ellis, I eat protein at every meal. My trainer says it keeps me strong. And physically, he looked fine, but his lab work didn't. His creatinine had climbed steadily, and his GFR was falling faster than expected. He wasn't overeating junk. He was overloading his kidneys with animal protein without realizing the cost. Here's the part no one explains clearly. When you eat large amounts of animal protein, especially red meat and processed meats, your body produces a high acid load and nitrogen-based waste products. Urea, creatinine, uric acid. These wastes must be filtered out entirely by the kidneys. The more protein you eat, the harder the kidneys must work hour after hour, day after day. For younger kidneys, this strain may be manageable. For aging kidneys, it becomes destructive. Multiple studies show that consuming more than 1.3 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day significantly accelerates kidney function decline in adults over 50. One large analysis found that high animal protein diets were associated with up to a 30% faster drop in GFR compared to moderate protein intake. And the damage isn't sudden. It's gradual, silent, and cumulative, exactly why so many people miss it. What makes animal protein especially problematic is its acid-forming nature. Acidic byproducts increase inflammation inside kidney tissue and force nephrons to work under constant chemical stress. Over time, filtration units' scar blood flow becomes impaired, and creatinine rises not because the kidneys failed overnight, but because they were never given time to recover. This doesn't mean protein is the enemy. It means the type, amount, and balance matter more than people think. Replacing some red meat with fatty fish, eggs, lentils, tofu, or beans dramatically reduces acid load. Pairing protein with fiber-rich vegetables helps bind toxins in the gut, lowering the burden before waste even reaches the kidneys. And limiting animal protein to moderate portions rather than building every meal around it often stabilizes creatinine within months. When patients adjust this correctly, something powerful happens. Muscle mass stays intact, energy improves, and kidney labs stop drifting in the wrong direction. Strength doesn't disappear, it becomes sustainable. But this is where most people misunderstand kidney nutrition. They think the problem ends with protein quantity. It doesn't. Because even if protein is controlled perfectly, there's another group of nutrients, often praised as healthy, that can push weakened kidneys into dangerous territory faster than people expect. And just knowing about protein still isn't enough, because the next factor is even more dangerous. And for some people, it can trigger sudden life-threatening complications if ignored. After minerals are brought under control, many people finally feel confident. Potassium is tracked, phosphorus is reduced, swelling improves, heart rhythm stabilizes, and yet something still keeps quietly pushing the kidneys toward decline. It doesn't taste salty. It doesn't look dangerous. In fact, it's often associated with comfort, energy, and convenience. The problem is sugar and the refined starches that act like sugar the moment they enter your bloodstream. I once treated a man in his late 50s who swore his diet was clean. No fast food, no soda, but every morning started with white toast and jam. Every afternoon included crackers or a pastry. Dinner ended with dessert just a few times a week. His blood sugar wasn't high enough to be called diabetes, but his creatinine kept rising and inflammation markers told the real story. His kidneys were under constant metabolic attack. Here's what refined sugar and processed starches do that most people never connect to kidney health. When glucose and fructose surge in the blood, they trigger oxidative stress and inflammatory signaling inside the glomeruli, the delicate filtering structures of the kidneys. Over time, repeated spikes damage the small blood vessels responsible for filtration, thickening their walls and reducing efficiency. This process quietly lowers GFR while creatinine rises, even in people who don't consider themselves sick. Research from nephrology and metabolic studies consistently shows that diets high in refined carbohydrates accelerate kidney function decline. In older adults with early-stage kidney disease, excessive sugar intake is linked to up to a 20% faster drop in GFR compared to those who control blood sugar variability. Fructose in particular increases uric acid production, further straining the kidneys and promoting inflammation. The damage isn't dramatic, it's persistent, and that's what makes it dangerous. What makes sugar especially deceptive is how normalized it has become. White bread, sweetened yogurt, breakfast cereal, fruit juice marketed as natural. These foods spike insulin, disturb gut bacteria, and create inflammatory byproducts the kidneys must clear. Even without diabetes, this constant burden forces nephrons to work overtime, leaving less capacity to handle minerals, protein waste, and toxins. The solution is not deprivation, it's replacement. Choosing whole grains over refined ones slows glucose absorption and reduces oxidative stress. Swapping sugary snacks for low glycemic fruits like berries, apples, or pears provides fiber and antioxidants without overwhelming the kidneys. Limiting liquid sugars is critical because fluids deliver glucose faster than solid food ever could. And stabilizing blood sugar doesn't just protect the kidneys, it reduces fatigue, improves circulation, and lowers cardiovascular risk at the same time. When patients make these changes, lab patterns begin to shift. Creatinine stops spiking unpredictably, inflammation markers drop, energy becomes more stable throughout the day. The kidneys are no longer fighting constant chemical stress from inside the bloodstream. But here's the final mistake many people make. They think sugar is the last enemy. It's not. Because there is one more factor often ignored, rarely discussed, that can quietly undo all the progress you've made and determine whether kidney damage stabilizes or accelerates beyond repair. And just knowing about sugar still isn't enough, because the next factor is even more dangerous, and it may decide whether your kidneys recover or fail. By the time people control sugar, many believe they've finally closed the loop. Salt is reduced, protein is moderated, minerals are tracked, blood sugar feels stable, and yet creatinine still refuses to behave. This is the moment when frustration sets in, because the last danger doesn't come from taste or cravings. It comes from something most people never think to question: ultra-processed foods and the phosphorus additives hidden inside them. I think of a 64-year-old patient who told me, "Dr. Ellis, I barely eat anymore. Just protein shakes, low-fat deli meat, and a few packaged meals. It's easier on my digestion." He wasn't overeating, he wasn't careless, but his phosphorus levels were climbing, his blood vessels were stiffening, and his kidney function was slipping faster than before. The problem wasn't how much he ate, it was what was added to his food. Here's what makes phosphorus additives uniquely dangerous. Unlike natural phosphorus found in whole foods, phosphate additives used in processed meats, packaged meals, baked goods, and protein powders are absorbed almost completely, up to 90%. Healthy kidneys can compensate for a while. Weakened kidneys cannot. Excess phosphorus builds up in the bloodstream, binds with calcium, and begins depositing in blood vessels and kidney tissue. This accelerates vascular calcification, raises cardiovascular risk, and increases the workload on already stressed nephrons. Clinical research consistently shows that high dietary phosphate intake is associated with faster progression of chronic kidney disease and increased mortality, even when blood phosphorus levels appear normal on standard labs. That's because damage begins at the tissue level long before numbers cross the danger line. Phosphate additives also stimulate inflammatory hormones that further impair kidney blood flow, quietly pushing filtration toward failure. What makes this threat especially insidious is how invisible it is. Phosphorus additives don't show up clearly on nutrition labels. They hide behind names like phosphate, polyphosphate, or phosphoric acid. They're common in foods marketed as convenient high protein or low fat, exactly what people trying to eat better often choose. And because they don't spike blood sugar or taste salty, the damage goes unnoticed. The solution is strategic awareness, not fear. Prioritizing fresh, minimally processed foods immediately lowers phosphate exposure. Avoiding processed meats, packaged meals, and artificial protein products gives the kidneys breathing room. Choosing whole protein sources prepared simply reduces inflammatory load while preserving nutrition. And when phosphorus intake drops, something critical happens. Blood vessels relax, kidney circulation improves, and filtration stabilizes instead of collapsing under constant chemical pressure. Patients who remove phosphate additives often see one of the most meaningful shifts in their labs. Creatinine stops creeping upward. Calcium balance improves. And for the first time, kidney decline slows in a way that feels real, not temporary. But here's the truth most people miss. Knowing each of these dangers individually still isn't enough. Because kidney damage doesn't come from one mistake. It comes from how these factors stack together day after day until the kidneys reach a breaking point. And just knowing this final factor still isn't enough, because what truly determines whether kidneys recover or fail is how all these choices come together. And that's exactly what we need to talk about next. After people clean up their food, remove hidden additives, and feel like they've finally done everything right, there's one mistake that still quietly undermines all that effort. It's not another food group. It's not sugar or salt. It's something far simpler and far more overlooked. Chronic low-level dehydration. I can't count how many patients tell me, Dr. Ellis, I drink when I'm thirsty. And that sounds reasonable until you realize thirst is a late warning sign. By the time you feel thirsty, your kidneys have already been operating under stress for hours. One man in his early 60s followed every dietary rule perfectly, yet his creatinine kept creeping up. When we tracked his routine, the issue was clear coffee in the morning, maybe a glass of water at lunch, and most fluids saved for the evening. His kidneys were spending the entire day filtering concentrated blood with insufficient fluid support. Here's what dehydration does inside the body. When fluid intake is low, blood becomes thicker and more concentrated. This forces the kidneys to work harder to filter waste, increasing intraglomerular pressure and accelerating nephron wear. Reduced hydration also slows toxin clearance, allowing creatinine, urea, and inflammatory byproducts to linger longer in the bloodstream. Over time, this constant strain quietly lowers GFR, even if your diet looks perfect on paper. Clinical data consistently shows that inadequate daily hydration is associated with faster kidney function decline, especially in adults over 50. Even mild dehydration increases the risk of kidney stone, raises vasopressin levels, and promotes fibrosis in kidney tissue. And no loading up on water at night doesn't fix it. Late hydration often leads to poor sleep and doesn't support daytime filtration when kidneys need it most. The solution is strategic hydration, not forced drinking. Spreading fluid intake evenly throughout the day reduces filtration pressure and supports steady toxin removal. Starting the morning with water before caffeine matters. Pairing fluids with meals improves absorption. And listening to urine color, not thirst, is one of the simplest, most effective kidney protection habits people can adopt. When patients hydrate correctly, lab trends often shift in subtle but meaningful ways. Creatinine stabilizes, stone risk drops, energy improves, and the kidneys finally get the support they need to do the job they've been struggling to maintain alone. But here's the truth that ties everything together. No single change saves the kidneys. Not food, not water, not supplements. What determines whether kidney function stabilizes or continues to decline is how all these daily choices stack together over time. As we come to the end of this video, I want you to pause for a moment and take a breath. If you're still here listening, that already tells me something important. You care about your health and you care about your kidneys. And that matters more than you realize. Kidney damage doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't heal overnight either. But what truly changes outcomes is awareness, followed by small, consistent choices. You don't need to overhaul your entire life starting tomorrow. You don't need extreme diets or fear-based decisions. What your kidneys need most is relief from constant pressure, inflammation, and overload. Every time you choose fresher food, reduce hidden salt or sugar, moderate protein, or avoid unnecessary additives, you are giving your kidneys space to breathe. And when the kidneys are allowed to breathe, they can stabilize, adapt, and in many cases protect what function remains. If this video helped you understand your body a little better, I encourage you to save this video. Not just for today, but for the days when motivation fades or habits start to slip. Sometimes one reminder at the right moment can prevent years of regret. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. I share ongoing science-based medical insights focused specifically on kidney health information meant to empower you, not overwhelm you, so you can make decisions with confidence rather than fear. Most importantly, remember, this declining kidney function does not mean your future is decided. Many people stabilize their creatinine slow progression and avoid dialysis simply by understanding what silently harms their kidneys and what truly supports them. You are not powerless here. You are learning, adjusting, and taking control, one informed choice at a time. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of your kidneys, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video where we continue building a healthier future together.